Hello, and thank you for being here. Before I tell you about each of the 6 bad messages, let me just explain where they come from and how they keep you stuck in a cycle of inviting abuse into your adult lives. As some of you may already know, I had a difficult childhood. As an adult, I ended up inviting abuse back into my adult life. Abuse that was exactly like the abuse I suffered as a child. My life was just a catalogue of disasters on all fronts, and I felt such shame as to how my life had turned out. Anyway, thanks to a clued in therapist, I finally learned in my 40s that I was repeating the abuse I had endured in my childhood because I was under the control of a sinister hidden toxic force called repetition compulsion. I'll explain that later. It was when I set out to write the book, Your Childhood is Over. No, it's not. That I asked myself this question: what keeps me under the control of this force? So I worked out that I was carrying what I call bad messages from my toxic childhood. And I worked out that there were 6 of these. And I'm going to explain them to you later. Well, soon. Anyway, I was constantly feeding myself these bad messages, and they kept me stuck in a place where I had absolutely no confidence. I had no self-confidence. Therefore, I was a sitting duck for abusers and exploitative people. So with the help of this therapist, I learned to simply flip these bad messages to what I now call good messages. And over time, I stopped feeding myself the bad messages and I replaced them with good messages. I know you're going to say that this seems so simple and so obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me, as these bad messages all come from our subconscious mind, so we don't even know they are there, that they're speaking to us. It was only when I became aware that I was telling myself these bad messages, then I was able to stop doing this to myself, and I was able to start flipping the bad messages to good messages. All right. So I can tell you honestly that this really does work. I have been flipping bad messages for many years now, and it's only in rare moments do any of the bad messages manage to sneak through. But as soon as I realise I am telling myself a bad message, I immediately nip it in the bud, I flip it, and then I shout out loud the good message to myself so that I definitely can hear it. You know, I don't want to sound silly, but I actually feel I've achieved something wonderful every time I flip a bad message. Why? Because these bad messages kept me stuck for so many years till I learned to stop them from controlling and ruining my life. Now, this is an important point. I mentioned the word subconscious, and I'm going to just explain this. The bad messages that we take from an abusive or toxic childhood all go into what's called our subconscious minds. We're not even aware of our subconscious minds. It's awful. It's really sneaky. Therefore, we are not aware that it is constantly feeding us harmful, negative thoughts about ourselves. These subconscious bad messages lead the charge in keeping us stuck in a bad place, as they invariably lead us to finding ourselves in abusive or toxic situations in our adult lives. And why is this? Why does this happen? Well, it's because children learn what they live. So if a child lives in a toxic or abusive environment, then this is what they will learn, in that abuse will be what they are familiar with. Abuse will be their normal. So in life, as we grow into adults, we are subconsciously, that word again, subconsciously programmed to repeat what feels familiar and normal to us. Therefore, if abuse was your normal as a child, you are programmed or subconsciously forced to gravitate towards abuse in your adult life. And this is the psychological concept called repetition compulsion. Now, repetition compulsion would not exist if it were not for the bad messages we constantly feed ourselves. Why? Because these bad messages that we tell ourselves lead us to finding ourselves in toxic and abusive situations over and over again in our adult lives. Remember, the bad messages result in us growing up with absolutely no self-confidence. So, is it any wonder that we find ourselves at the mercy of toxic, abusive, and exploitative people? If we have absolutely no self-confidence, we cannot stand up for ourselves. So we are very vulnerable to abuse in our adult lives. So in summary, if you grew up in a toxic or abusive environment, This will be your normal. And as you become an adult, since you are programmed to gravitate to what feels normal, you will naturally gravitate towards abusive or toxic situations in your adult life. The bad messages that you take from your abusive childhood, make sure you have absolutely no self-confidence, so these bad messages lead the charge in keeping you being under the control of the programming to invite abuse back into your adult life. And this programming is called repetition compulsion, in that you are forced or compelled to repeat in your adult life the abuse you suffered as a child. Now, I'm going to go through what I call the 6 bad messages one by one that you took from your abusive or toxic childhood. The first bad message is, you are not enough. As a child, you learned very early that you were never quite enough. No matter how hard you tried, the approval, praise, or emotional safety you needed never came. Over time, you stopped seeing this as a problem with the adults around you, and instead you turned it inward. You concluded that I am not enough. As an adult, this bad message quietly drives you. You may overwork, overgive, constantly seek validation, yet you never truly feel enough. Achievements don't matter. Compliments don't appear genuine. You don't believe people like you, as you are just not enough. This is not because you are lacking. It is because you are still carrying a childhood belief that was never yours to begin with. So what do you do about this? Flip it. Flip the bad message and start right now. When you hear your subconscious mind telling you that you are not enough, flip it to I am enough. I have plenty to offer, and I am enough just as I am. And it's that simple. I really mean it. It's that simple. You cancel the bad message out with a good message, and over time, your mind will get so used to hearing the good message that you will no longer be able to accept the bad message. This really does work, as I have been flipping bad messages for a long time now, and rarely, as I said before, ever do I get a bad message sneaking through. Now, I'm going to tell you about the second bad message. The second bad message is, you are responsible for me and others. How terrifying is that? To think you have to carry all that responsibility? No, that's not right. However, in a toxic or abusive childhood, roles often became reversed. Instead of being cared for, you were expected to care emotionally and practically for adults and our siblings. You learned that other people's moods, needs, their crises were somehow all your responsibility. As an adult, this turns into a chronic guilt, people pleasing, exhaustion. You feel you must look after everybody in your orbit. You feel responsible for fixing them, for keeping them happy. You can never say no to anyone, as you are afraid they will reject you if you dare to say no. Saying no is too terrifying. Looking after everyone around you, it isn't actually being kind to them. However, it is a survival strategy that you once had to keep you safe. You had to develop this survival strategy. But in your adult life, it only leads to burnout and exhaustion, and most important, it leads you to not looking after yourself. So what do you do about this? You flip this bad message. You nip it and you flip it. Nip it in the bud and flip it. And you say, I am not responsible for others. I am responsible for myself. Of course I care about others, and I will, of course, help people when it is truly necessary and appropriate, but it is not my responsibility to always have to take care of everyone. I must take care of myself. The third bad message is, don't trust your feelings and don't trust your instincts. When your feelings were dismissed, mocked, punished, or ignored as a child, you learned an essential lesson. Your inner signals cannot be trusted. You were told you were too sensitive or too dramatic, or you were just imagining something, or you were making it up. You were told you were wrong. As an adult, This leaves you disconnected from your instincts. You second guess yourself. You stay in unhealthy situations and you're not able to see red flags. Even when something feels very wrong, you still don't know whether or not to trust those instincts because you've never learned to trust them. But those instincts, they were never broken. They were always there. They were just simply trained into silence. Learning to trust your feelings and your instincts is one of the most powerful steps in breaking free from repetition compulsion. I found this difficult to do myself. I had to work really hard on knowing when an instinct was trying to tell me something important. And I have to be honest, this particular one took me a lot of practice. I really couldn't understand what they were trying to tell me. And when they were trying to tell me that something wasn't safe or somebody wasn't safe, I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know whether to trust it. But I learned the hard way because my instincts were always right. And I did get myself into a few bad situations because I didn't listen to them. But it was really interesting that it took that for me to actually think, oh my God, my instincts were trying to tell me this was wrong, but I wasn't able to listen to them. So sometimes you just have to make some mistakes before you get the hang of trusting your instincts, and that's okay. I now know when my instincts are trying to tell me something that I need to know. I feel safe now as I know my instincts are there to protect me, and my instincts are always right. So try it. Next time you get a feeling that something is not right, say about a person or a situation, stop. Just notice this. This is your instinct trying to warn you of possible harm. So listen and believe it. This feeling, or inner voice as some people call it, it's your protection from harm and danger. It senses danger long before you ever can, and it tries to warn you in advance so as to keep you safe. Now, I will say it's a wonderful feeling when you know that it is okay to listen to your feelings and instincts. You know that you are finally safe, as anything that is not good for you, your instincts will tell you, and they were always right, and you will trust them and you will believe them. Your instincts are on your side, looking out for you. So let them in. You know why? Because they have been trying to protect you for as long as you have been on this planet. The fourth bad message is, you are bad. You are wrong. Some children grow up believing they just don't do bad things. They believe they are bad. Shame becomes part of their identity. Repeated criticism, repeated blame, or emotional cruelty teaches a child that something is fundamentally wrong with them. In adult life, this shows up as harsh self-judgment, self-loathing, self-sabotage, or tolerating abuse. You may feel undeserving of love, rest, or any happiness. But shame is not the truth. It is a learned response to being mistreated. So what do you do about this? Again, you nip it and you flip it. You nip the bad message as it's coming into your conscious and then you flip it. You work hard on flipping it, and in time you will really start truly believing that you are actually a good, decent, lovable person. In time, you will start to like yourself. This really does work. I know, as I worked hard on flipping this particular bad message. I grew up thinking that I was bad, that I was wrong. And I worked really hard nipping that message and then flipping it. It does work. You are a good, decent, lovable person. The fifth bad message is, you are alone. Nobody loves you. This is such a sad, destructive, bad message to be carrying around in your subconscious mind. I find all the bad messages heartbreaking, but this one really hurts because this is how I felt for most of my life. Do you mind me asking, do you feel this way too? If you do, you're not alone. Emotional neglect teaches one of the most devastating messages of all, that you are on your own in this world. And what a terrible way to have to go through life this is, feeling you are on your own. When you were a child, even if people were physically present, you felt unseen, unheard, and emotionally abandoned. You never felt what it was like to feel loved and cherished and wanted. Love was always out of reach. Any snippets of love that you ever felt were conditional and inconsistent. You got so used to not feeling love from anybody that you felt nobody even noticed you. You were alone. Nobody wanted you. As an adult, this belief can make closeness feel very unsafe. So, on the one hand, you may keep people at arm's length to avoid intimacy and to avoid maybe being hurt. Or you may be the opposite. You may cling tightly to somebody out of fear of abandonment. The loneliness you feel as an adult is not proof that nobody loves you. It is the echo of unmet childhood needs. So what do we do about this particularly destructive bad message? Again, when you hear it coming into your head, you are alone and nobody loves you, flip it, nip it and flip it, nip it in the bud. Don't give it airtime and flip it to, I am not alone. People do love me. People do see me. People do want me. Keep practicing this good message, and over time, I promise you, you will believe it. And finally, the sixth bad message is, you must be perfect or nobody will love you. When love was conditional on performance, obedience, or success, perfection became your solution. It became your protection. You felt you could never make mistakes. You felt if you didn't succeed at something, people would reject you. In adulthood, this bad message fuels anxiety, burnout, and a fear of ever being accepted for who you are. You may try to hide flaws, over-prepare, or avoid risks entirely because making a mistake is intolerable. But real connection with people does not require perfection. It requires being yourself, just being you, something you were never allowed to do as a child. So what do we do about this bad message? And at the risk of repeating myself, and I am going to repeat myself, we nip it and flip it. So the good message becomes, I do not need to be perfect for people to like or love me. The good message becomes, people love me for who I am. They love me just as I am. I can relax and just be myself. I do not need ever again to try and be perfect in the hope that people will like me or love me. They like me and they love me just as I am. Isn't that a nice way to flip it? So I hope this video explains the 6 bad messages we take from an abusive or toxic childhood. They really are so damaging, and we can only start nipping and flipping these bad messages when we become aware of them. And hopefully with this video, you are now aware of them. In my experience, repetition compulsion and the bad messages go hand in hand. As if you think about it, if we only fed good messages to ourselves, we would never tolerate any mistreatment or any toxic situations, because those good messages would instill such confidence into ourselves we wouldn't allow anyone mistreat us. So when we feed only bad messages to ourselves, we end up with no confidence, and so we will end up in toxic and abusive situations because we're sitting ducks for exploited people and abusers. They love to target people that have no confidence. And if we keep getting into abusive situations, we will end up repeating the abuse we suffered as a child, and we will end up under the control of repetition compulsion. So, if we nip and flip the bad messages, we are stopping the control repetition compulsion has over us. We are free at last to live a life free of abuse. Hopefully, now that you're aware of the 6 bad messages, you can start right now to nip and flip them. The bad messages are lies. Flip them to the truth about yourself. From now on, no more lies, no more abuse. It is time for you to hear the beautiful truths about yourself, and you'll hear those truths when you nip and flip each bad message. And I'm going to leave you now, and I'm going to leave you with 6 beautiful truths about yourself. You are enough. You are not responsible for others. You are allowed to trust your feelings, and you are allowed to trust your instincts. You are good and you are right. You are not alone. People do love you. You do not need to be perfect for people to love you. I hope this helps you. Thank you for listening.